My name is Ernestine Baldwin. I'm one of the founders of the Barrie Native Friendship Centre here in 1987. I grew up with radio. I'm not even sure what a podcast is. I've heard it, people say, oh, it's a podcast. Oh, okay.
My name's Greg. I work here at the center. I've always had a love for radio and listening to stories. I can remember as a kid always listening to the radio at night, and I would fall asleep listening to like hockey games, baseball games, and that's kind of morphed into listening to talk radio when I was like in my teenage years. And so when this opportunity became available where we could talk about things going on at the Friendship Center and Indigenous issues and topics, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to sit and chat about that with colleagues. And so I'm really excited to do that. And I think it should be really fun. And hopefully the listeners get something from it and they want to, tune in and check it out and see what's going on.
Awesome.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go next. My name's Samantha. I've been working here at the Friendship Center now for over 5 years. And one of the things that we've always had trouble with is really communicating with our community in different formats. We always relied on people walking through the doors, physically walking through the doors. And then with the last couple of years with COVID and with shutdowns and with restrictions, it's made it a really big challenge to, not have people walk through the doors. And I really miss talking with people and hearing their stories, because that was one of the things that I really liked about our lounge at the center is, you could sit down, have a coffee, and talk to any random person that came in through the door. They could be looking for somebody else or just passing through. And I really miss that. And I think, people also miss hearing from us, because they also, recognize us in different, places around the city. And I was hoping to, look at this form of media and communication so that we could talk with them. And I do like talk radio. I do like the whole idea of stories. I love the, it wasn't quite podcasts, but it was stories that would like true crime, or I used to listen to Afghanada a long time ago. And it was just nice because you could hear, it's like hearing and peering into somebody else's life for a little while. And it's just a little snippet. And then you want to know more. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to do this. And I kind of want to know more too.
Mm-hmm. Good. So my name's Paige. I've worked at the center about 4 months now. I too love radio. I always have. CBC radio, I grew up listening to that, both AM and FM. I actually used to have a radio show in Peterborough with my sister, and I learned a lot about the history of radio through Trent Radio in Peterborough. And I just think it's really a special thing, like, to listen to someone, especially if you live alone and you're at home alone, and it brings like a sense of community, even though you're not physically in touch with them. And sharing stories is so important to our culture. So like a podcast just seems really appropriate for BNFC, especially, with the landscape with COVID and everything. And people are really missing those human connections. So, and there's so much wonderful things that we do here at the center for Barrie and surrounding communities. So I'm just really excited to be here and to chat with everyone and see where this podcast goes. It's a fun adventure.
Good morning. My name is Ernestine Baldwin. I'm one of the founders of the Barrie Native Friendship Centre here in 1987. So I grew up with radio. I'm not even sure what a podcast is. I've heard it, people say, oh, it's a podcast. Oh, okay. There's a long history with the center, and
Can you come on?
I've been the elder since 1996. And I know why. It's not because I knew a lot of the culture. When we first started the center, we had no idea. We had no culture. We just learned. We brought people in to help us learn. No, but we learned the culture through the center for having people coming to talk to us and helping us to how to do sharing circles, and introduced us to smudging. So when I moved here to Barrie in 1976, I didn't even see any Indigenous people around. So it wasn't until we started the center that people started getting together. So I'm happy to be here and share whatever I can.
If you don't mind me asking you, Ernestine, who was the driving force in getting that, like, really instrumental in getting that community together? Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, there was Sun Housing. I discovered through my sons playing hockey. Their coach was Frank Sutherland, and him and his wife were, and some other people started the Sun Housing. It was income housing for people coming off reserve to have a place to live. And then I realized there was a big community, and so we did get together, and Ken Giroux's, he's another founder. He had connections with the OFIFC. His sister was the president, I think, of the Toronto office down there. So we just all got together and started talking about, wanting us to have a place to gather, a place to come together. So yeah, it took a little while, and sadly, most of the founders have passed on. Yeah, so it's really was really really a wonderful place to come to see other people from different reserves too. They didn't all come from one reserve. They come from different places, and getting to know different people, getting to know different stories, different their whatever they did in their communities, their how they got together, or what ceremonies they did, in different. So how we got started was that when my sons were playing hockey, and their coach was Frank Sutherland, who was one of the Sun Housing founders. And through talking, then I was related to his wife. So anyway, so we became friends. And I never knew them before I moved I moved from Toronto to Barrie.
So I had heard in the early beginnings that this had started in someone's basement.
Yes.
And I was just wondering,
Yeah, that was Cheryl Sutherland's.
Seeing the transformation from then to now, like.
Yeah, that's where we had all our meetings. And then we rented on Dunlop Street was the first place. It was, we had an upstairs part. That's where the first Friendship Center was located. And so then from there, then we moved to Owen Street. And we were there for quite a while, Owen Street. I remember when we first moved to Owen Street, I think it must have been a beauty parlor store. And when we were cleaning it all up, we went down into the basement. The basement was all dark. And somebody turned on the light and there was a whole bunch of heads down there. They were mannequin heads. I still have one. I took one. Yeah, that was funny. Yes, and then from Owen Street, and then you were able to purchase this building. So we've been here for quite a while. This building used to be Arc Industries. It was really nice because where the gym is, the community room, we should call it, the tables came out of the wall, I guess, for the clients that were there to do their whatever work they were doing. It was Arc Industries. It was called then. It was like a work. People who had physical or mental challenges, they could earn some money by doing some work. So that was really nice. So when they left here, moved over to the other place, we took this over, and the tables were so convenient to pull them out of the wall and have our feasts and put them all back again after we were finished.
That's interesting. I've heard of beds coming from the walls, but never tables. So that's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we had come up with for the name of the podcast was Shining Waters, and perhaps if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I know Sam knows the story, but so I guess the original name for Lake Simcoe was Shining Water,
Okay.
because of the way the sun falls on the lake. And it's also known as the mother water to Georgian Bay. So that's the history of that. And we can actually see the water from our center if you look down Bayfield Street. So we thought that was an appropriate name. Yeah, it must be something, Ernestine, to have been around the entire time from the beginning to now and see all the changes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We've had, and it provided jobs for people too, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of, after they have a job here and have a little training, then they can move on to somewhere else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a nice spot. It's too bad we've grown so much that it's too bad we couldn't grow up, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someday.
Someday. Yeah.
And we used to have a store here. It was called Nokmas Craft Shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Nice.
I think it was Tina Giroux who was the first person to come and, to look after the store. Yeah, and we had people come and bring craft stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then we sold, and lots of changes. And we used to run a Head Start program with my little granddaughter who graduated into grade out of Head Start. And we used to have congregate dining with the elders and the children together. Yeah, over down in that other room down there.
Okay. I got
We all meet once a week at the elders'
We're in the process of getting
and had dinner, and then the children were in the middle, eh? They would come and have their lunch with us. It's so cute.
I know from living in Barrie my whole life, I had never been in this building until I had started working here in the fall of 2020. And I'd always wondered what kind of went on here and things like that. And it's been really nice to see what the center offers and the people that work here and different personalities and how everyone is contributing to the community. I can remember on Every Child Matters Day, I was doing a group on the Thursday night, and it's known here among the center that we have spirits living here and things happening. And I can remember on that, the night before Every Child Matters, I was doing my group here, and the energy was very, you could feel it, and there was like a lot of noise going on. You could hear things, and it just seemed like, I don't know, something was trying to say something or let their presence be felt. And I can remember coming in after on the Friday after Every Child Matters, and it just seemed, I could really sense it. I don't know if that's just something, I don't know, but it just seemed very light. And I don't know, I believe things are here and trying to say something.
I haven't heard of anybody else talking. I mean, they probably did. I'm not here all the time, and I haven't been. I was teaching, so I wasn't here every day, during all this time. I was away teaching for 1995 to 2010 for the Rama particularly. So I wasn't here every day, to see all whatever else was going on. Yeah, so it's like recently again that I've been able to, to come back fairly often, not as much as my husband used to come here. He used to come to the elders meetings. Then when I retired and I started coming, he stayed home. Yeah, he made moccasins and everything. That's where he had Ursula Jocko. Yeah, he came down here when I was working because he's been retired. And no, he doesn't come down. Funny. He must feel funny, I guess. And he won't go to me. If I'm eldering at a powwow, he won't come.
Really?
But he likes going to powwows when we just go together, right? Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's so I guess he thinks when I come down, if he came down here with, I don't know, he must feel funny, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so it's too bad, that I was trying to count. I think there's only 3 or 4 of us left of the founders. Yeah.
How many founders were there?
Well, the women are on the door. My daughter was one of the founders too, but she was coming to the meetings. Yeah. She lived in Sun Housing before, and she worked for Sun Housing too at one time. She worked for here. Yeah. Yeah, my daughter worked here, and then 2 of my daughters worked here, and a granddaughter worked here. Like at different times.
Well, I think,
all at once.
is it your great-granddaughter or granddaughter? No, great-granddaughter, Miranda. She worked here while I was working here as a camp counselor.
She was in the camp. Yeah. Yeah, my granddaughter. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to, it gives employment for people too, right?
Well, it's cool that you're different generations have different kinds of connections with the Friendship Center.
Yeah.
I'm not from Barrie. I moved here 10 years ago, but I grew up in Sudbury.
Yeah.
With the Friendship Center over there, and my parents, both of them sat on the board and did all kinds of stuff in the late 70s and early 80s, and into the 90s. But I remember, I always found the Friendship Center just a comforting place, knowing that it was there, even if I didn't go all the time. And I wonder sometimes if that's how people feel about us at the Friendship Center, it's like they like knowing we're here. And then if there's something, like if they need something or if they need a connection or something, then they feel like they could. I like to think that they feel that they could come in and chat with us. And I mean, that's what I hope.
Yeah, I know,
Sure.
eh? Yeah. And well, I'd like to see more of the younger. We need to have more things for younger. You know, the young people. Like, they don't have to be in school, but you know.
I agree with you
They
100%.
really have no place to do anything. When I was a teenager, we had dances every night of the week. And when I lived in Toronto, and then you only pay 10 cents or 15 cents to get into the dance. But I danced every night of the week. Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, we just danced everybody knew where to go to a dance. They would be at a school or just at a place. And a Saturday night, they would have this dance in this big house. You climb the stairs. And the old elder people would be the ones that were, what do you call it? Supervising or chaperoning the dances. Yeah.
So then you had all the generations together too,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah. Gosh, that was nice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, they do different dances now. But we did the dances, we were partners. Now you can just dance any old way you wanted. Oh gosh. Yeah, so this is, without this place, I probably would not have, if I didn't move to Barrie, I probably would not. This is where the program came up for me or the idea came to me that I should be teaching my language. I had it inside of me, but I didn't have it out here. And so they had this, the Friendship Center gave me that opportunity. Because then as soon as I made that decision, then my life just changed, and it just, gosh, I can't believe it sometimes when I think about it. Even my old friend there, she says, "Yeah, Ernestine, I can't believe that you're teaching." I said, "I know."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I agree with you too that the younger people, it's important for them to have a place to come to, because I'm like a lot of young Indigenous people are hungry for the culture to learn about it. And haven't had an opportunity, especially urban Indigenous, right? Like myself, who I didn't grow up with the culture, and kind of had a lot of people have to go about it themselves now to learn about their identity, and it's important, like that. It's so cool that we offer that space, and even this podcast. Like people can sit at home and learn about different aspects of our culture, which is really important.
Yeah.
One thing that I found was a real eye-opener. I think it was like within the first couple months I started working here. I met 3 young lads that were playing hockey. They were from the Sioux Lookout. And I did a home visit. I met with them. And so we did a smudge, and they were from the reserve. They grew up there their entire life. And he asked me, he's like, "Am I doing this right?" And I was like, wow, I was just shocked at that. That
I thought they knew more than you.
Yeah, and like kind of like what Paige said, like I didn't grow up with any kind of culture. I had an understanding of what it was like in a way, but not to the degree that you would think someone living on the reserve might have. So I was really shocked with that.
Right.
It's kind of sad actually.
It is.
Cool. shouldn't take. It's not really that sad that they're learning.
Yeah, I don't mean sad. It was just kind of, from my perspective,
You were,
I would just think that would just be common knowledge. Like that would just be something that you would know, kind of thing.
yeah, there's lots of people that don't know. Or if they know about it, they're not really wanting to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's I always think that's when I talk to people and I talk about how that, that the culture would. I grew up not knowing that we had any kind of spirituality at all, I think I kind of knew, but I didn't. I remember, like, I grew up on the reserve till I was 10, and then eventually my mother went back to live there. And when my mother passed on, she was from the United Church, and we're not allowed to go to the United Church because we're Catholics. Can't go to the church. But we did go a couple of times, just really curious to see what it looked like in there. How come we were not allowed to go in there? Anyway, when my mother passed away, and they had her funeral, and I never thought about a spirit world. All you know is heaven or hell. Mm-hmm. And when they were taking my mother away, and I thought, my mother wasn't a bad person, She there's no way she's going to a hell. And I thought, there must be a place for Native people to go. That's when I first thought of the spirit world, eh? There must be another place for Anishinaabe because we were really good people. And just because you didn't have a Christian or a Catholic upbringing, that you were not, you were not going to be accepted by the Creator. I thought that's the first time I ever thought of there's a difference. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to do all the talking.
No, thanks for sharing that.
You don't want to do all the talking? I'm happy just
I know, I
listening.
love
Like,
listening to
and I think that's, brings us kind of into the idea that what we were, as starting out this podcast, that we said, well, let's start because of the time of year. We're in December. The snow has fallen. It had fallen, but it's now green grass again outside. But usually this time of year, when the snow has fallen, we would start to tell stories. We would sit and gather, and this is part of it, and I think it's great. But you were starting to talk a little bit earlier about, maybe it was out of necessity, and I wanted to hear more. I was like, oh, tell me more.
Well, thinking about it, the people worked all summer, right, gathering the food in the fall, gathering all the food that was going, because they had really severe winters, really, really cold winters. And there was they couldn't go into a nice heating house with. And so they really had to get ready. So they were busy all, from spring for the 3 seasons, and to get ready for that long winter. So that was when, after they had all their stuff ready, getting ready for that long winter in their teepees or their whatever they call their. We didn't have teepees.
Wigwam.
But we had birch bark.
Birch bark.
I don't know what they were called.
Structures?
Wigwams. We'll just call them
We'll just call them
wigwams. They were made out of birch bark. Wigwam, and they stayed in there. So that's how all the stories, all their things passed down from generation. That's where they would teach. So I think that, and then the quiet time, in the winter. It's almost like a spirit. It is a spiritual time. If you live out in the country, I mean, you can't feel it here with the city. There's noise all night long. But if you lived in the country, there's something really peaceful about winter time, especially when the moon is out. And it's almost like daytime. You can walk around. We used to do that skating. The community would be skating. All the community would go out, except for the really old people. Families would go out. There was always a hill. There was a hill near where my sister lived, and everybody went there after supper and had a sleigh ride. Yeah. Yeah, and walking on that snow, that nice hard snow, is such a nice sound.
It is.
I don't know if anybody else thinks it's so, but I like the sound of crunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to look out our window. You could see it almost like a clear day of the nice snow. But it was a hard time though. There was no cars going by, or few people had horse and sleigh. Yeah. So I think that was how, it was a time of people. People had a lot of time for thinking and. Yeah. Playing games. I remember my mother and stepfather, a neighbor would come over and they'd bring out the Chinese checkers. It was ugly. They played Chinese checkers all the time. Making tea and just talking, and we'd be listening upstairs. Listening to what they were talking about. Yeah, and we had an elder lady. Well, we called her Maggie Bunham, but I think her last name was Maggie Jones. I don't know where she got that Bunham name. But what she would do is, because she was a widow, she would come and stay at our house. She'd come and stay there for maybe a month in the wintertime, and she told stories, and we just sat and listened to her. She told stories of like different things about bear walking and stuff. They're scary stories, all in the language, Like she didn't speak English. Oh, and then she would leave our place and then go and move on to stay with another family.
Oh, that is so cool.
That's what she did in the wintertime. Yeah. Yeah, Maggie. It must have been the 1940s, because I was born in 1939. So, and then I moved to Toronto in 1953, I think. So in between those years, yeah, I lived in. It was nice. I was really lonesome when we moved to the city.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
That would have been a big difference going from
Oh, it was
from,
such a big difference. It made
from
me
home
sick
to
when
Toronto.
I used to get sick when I got on the streetcars, the fumes or
Oh.
something. It just, I get a headache. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hate it. I didn't like it. My brother and I wanted to, we should find that station and take follow those tracks back to our home, eh? Oh, gosh. But we got used to it. But spiritually, I guess, too, eh? You could speak about the spirituality of the solstice.
Maybe. I was thinking like because I grew up in the city as well, and I would spend my summers and different breaks back in my parents' home communities. So my mom's from Chiging, Manitoulin, my dad's from Wiikwemko. So I would go back there and stay with family periodically as I was growing up. And it was just always very different. But I really only stayed with my family, so my parents' family, when we'd go home. So I didn't have a lot of, as when I was younger, I didn't meet a lot of other people from the community. It wasn't until I got older, and in our communities, your last name and who your parents are and who your grandparents are, that places you. So it was always, what's your name? Oh, my name's Samantha Kinoshameg. Who are your parents? There wasn't any other nice to meet you.
No.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's right.
Who are your parents? So I'd be like, okay, my parents are Ray and Lila Kinoshameg. And then sometimes they would say something, usually in Ojibwe, referring to probably my dad. And then they would ask, about my grandparents, depending on how old the people were. And then I would say, my grandfather's name was Joe Kinoshameg. And my grandmother's name was Stella Kinoshameg. So, sometimes that would come up, or they would tell me who my grandparents were and tell me something about them. And so, spending the winters out there, again, with a lot of Christian influence, we celebrated Christmas and not so much solstice back then, but now, with my parents, it's moved more towards the solstice celebration and that change of season, celebrating the whole time, going from, how is it? The nighttime is the longest night of the year. We celebrated that because then you're going into that long night and then you're going into the other side. And then, we would attend, they used to call them midwinter ceremonies, and they would happen after Christmas, usually in January. So I grew up with this really what are we doing? We started, late November. We do stuff with this family, we do stuff with this family, and then we do stuff with community and all of these different things that were going on. But it was a lot of sit down and listen to what's going on.